Thomas Barnett, Senior Manager of Service Provider Marketing at Cisco.
I'm Arielle Sumits. I'm Lead Analyst of the Visual Networking Index at Cisco.
Cisco has a vision for the network, and part of the work that Arielle and I do is around that vision, and not only where we are today, but where we're going as a company and as all people who use the network. And so I think we're looking at sort of three key areas that the research is focused on from a visual networking index perspective is what's happening at home or residential services, mobile services obviously, which are exploding around the globe, and then more and more business, whether it be enterprise or small to medium business, and even small mom and pop shops that are more and more using the network and service provider services and other technologies, if you will, to advance their business. So we look to see the growth, what the network growth is in each of those areas, and obviously Cisco has a vested interest in better understanding, what the needs are from a network perspective there as well.
What we found is that mobile is definitely one of the fastest growing areas. So we expect about a 66-fold increase between now and 2013 of mobile data traffic. And then the rest of the network, the fixed network, is also growing at a very fast pace, about 46% CAGR. So roughly doubling every 2 years. And that's largely due to video. I mean, video is really the primary driver right now. Peer-to-peer is still around, is still a large percentage of the traffic. But video is becoming ever more important in the traffic mix.
There's concern, but there's also, I think, positive assurance that the network, as it's being built out by many service providers and private networks, will be able to support this exponential growth that we see. I think the concern is more from we as consumers, the experiences that we have. I think all of us have experienced, being cut off from having a phone connection or internet connection or something network-based be dropped. With video, it's even more dramatic, because if you have any lag time or jitter within that video stream or however you're receiving that connection, your experience has been denigrated to some degree. And so, one, I think it's maintaining the experience, and two, I think it's we all now want what we want when we want it. And so we all have more and more devices, and so the network has to be intelligent enough to know if you're watching your favorite program on a high definition TV, if you're watching streaming video from your laptop, which could be that same program now, which is posted or available somewhere by the broadcaster, or if you're looking at a clip of it on a smartphone. So all these different screens, all using video, but optimized for the particular size of that screen. So I think it's a combination of both bandwidth, and video does change everything. It's certainly not the same as transporting an email, but then there's also the experience to the different screens.
We really think that intelligence is needed in the network, in part because if you just simply increase capacity, demand will eventually catch up. And that's what we've seen as we've looked at Japan, Korea. The amount of traffic that is generated by an individual household there can be 5 to 10 times what we have in the U.S. So they're finding ways to fill the pipe.
And just quickly, what are they doing in Japan? What kind of stuff are they doing that's so content or data rich? Yeah,
so a lot of that is video. So it's video is really can blow away any text type traffic. So email becomes less significant. Web browsing even, to the extent that it excludes video, it becomes less significant. And video kind of takes over because it's so, the pixel count is high and the bit rate is high. So we believe that there are just a number of applications that will surface, that will start to take up the increased capacity, and therefore you need to manage different types of applications to ensure that they're not impacted by the larger bit rate application. So for instance, voice is quite light traffic-wise, but you want to ensure the quality, so you don't want it to be overwhelmed by video file downloads or other applications. So for that reason, you need to treat that traffic differently.
In terms of innovations, what I think we see from a number of different types of carriers or even broadcasters is extending the intelligence of the network beyond the core or the head end, the video head end, all the way out to providing further reach. So a lot of the video data centers, if you will, or video storage is now closer and closer to the edge of the network, where as we as consumers are able to have either video on demand or a variety of on-demand services that are streamed or ordered directly for us. So once again, we are more empowered as consumers, and even as we see set-top boxes now have much more capability, if you will, or intelligence within them to provide a wider array of personalization. So we're able to choose the programming when we want to view it and whether we want to record it. So the DVR, PVR phenomena continues. And I think the other innovation really is from not just the technology, but the business alliances that we see. So service providers partnering with any number of content providers, and we see multiple boxes coming into the home, whether it's gaming stations like an Xbox or Netflix partnering with people to get their content out. So there are people that have something to bring to the party, and then there are other parts of that business alliance that have the consumer base already there, and that mix and how that ultimately, especially for a service provider, becomes monetized is really another part of the innovation. So we see that happening quite a bit, and I think certainly consumers will determine what they're willing to pay for, but as consumers, it's a great time to really be experimenting and seeing a lot of these new services or experiences that we haven't had before.
When it comes to mobile data traffic growth, what we really see is that the increasing diversity of devices really has an impact. So it's no longer handsets alone, it's also laptops that have air cards that send the traffic over a cellular network. And the usage profile of a laptop is entirely different from a smartphone. So there's no walled garden, even though that is opening up as well on the handset side. But users can do as much peer-to-peer, video, file download as they like. File downloads right now to handsets, that's relatively uncommon, and there's no peer-to-peer to speak of. So we found that by 2013, in the U.S., about half of the traffic will actually come from laptops and netbooks and not from handsets alone. And then the handsets themselves are becoming much more flexible, and so there will be an increasing amount of video that will drive that traffic up as well. So those are the main drivers.
We really were surprised in the latest release of our VNI, our Visual Networking Index usage, that Arielle had mentioned peer-to-peer traffic, while it was large, was less a percentage of the overall traffic mix. And I think as we see more collaboration applications, so social networking, people using the Facebooks, the MySpace, those sorts of things, and not only YouTube, but the plethora of other consumer-generated video sites, that's really beginning to overtake, if you will, or catch up with peer-to-peer. Certain people think maybe it's because now we do want that live instant gratification rather than the file sharing and sharing things back and forth. We become even more impatient in our consumption of what the network has to offer. But that was a real interesting data point for me. And I guess the other part of it, I think we found that 1% of all the global internet users generated 20% of the overall traffic. And the top 10%, I believe, generated 60% of the overall traffic. So again, a number of theories for this. There are a few of us that are basically willing to try and use the network almost all the time, but I think there are also early adopters of some of these high-end advanced services that drive up the traffic usage as well. So those are two of the big things that stood out to me.
We do track about 14 countries, so we are not comprehensive in terms of countries, but among those countries that we do track, the fastest growing would be those in Latin America and in Africa. So South Africa, Brazil, Mexico. would be our fastest growing markets overall. And they also are the fastest growing, they tend to be the fastest growing in mobile. Now, in some cases, that's simply because the services are getting there a little bit later. So they're starting from a smaller base. But in some cases, like South Africa, a large part of the mobile growth is that there's a lot of mobile broadband substitution, meaning that you take your laptop, you enable it with cellular or mobile broadband access, and then you don't have a fixed line at all. It's your primary broadband. And that accounts for the majority of mobile broadband adds in South Africa right now, and therefore that's driving a huge amount of mobile traffic. And that's happening to a lesser extent in Latin America. There it's a little bit more driven by applications. The capacity that has recently been installed that opens up more international traffic from Africa should have a huge impact, because Africa has been incredibly supply constrained. And this is another example of how the demand can vary with the supply. So we should see that pipe fill up, I think, quite quickly. Because I think it's just opening the floodgates. I think there's a lot of pent-up demand for that bandwidth.
Well, I think in general, Cisco believes in an open network, and certainly a lot of the initiatives that we have been to provide greater network access to emerging markets and developing countries like those in Africa, like those in Latin America and other places. We also have service provider customers and can appreciate what they own and what they've invested in, but we definitely believe in an open network, and our tools and resources and the solutions that we have as one of the leaders in internet working are all designed to enhance not only the experience but to make that experience more available to others. So I'd say our position in general would be for it to be open.
With net neutrality.
With net neutrality, yeah.